little bit, get it focused. People, I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of Cliff's Corner. Cliff's Corner is a space for myself, Cliff Jones, piano coach and classical pianist for now going on 24 years, can't believe it. It's a space where I talk about a lot of different music things, other things besides music, sports, and all those great things that mean so much to me. But today's topic is more about music and how do you practice long form repertoire, right? You know that the importance of, practicing anything long, you got to break everything up into shorter sections, right? And when you've done that, how do you piece everything together without building brain fatigue or brain fog or anything like that, right? So we're going to break that down today. First and foremost, when it comes to long form repertoire, anything from like 10 minutes long or 8 minutes long or 20 minutes long or even longer than that, piano repertoire, it's always best to start off with what is the overall story that you're going to convey about this piece. What are you trying to tell your audience that lives in here and here? What story are you bringing up? Is it a personal story? Is it a story that you're making up based off of the music that you're playing? Once you have that part down pat, then of course you dive into the whole entire aspect of learning this piece, right? I remember when this is 2021, I was learning the Sonata in B minor by Franz Liszt. You know that piece? That piece is roughly like 32 minutes long in performance time and roughly 34 pages long. I have the music in front of me right here. And I started it at the beginning of the year in January, and I performed it in December of that year. I took a long time to learn it because it is such a monumental, special piece to myself, and in piano repertoire, it's one of those high standard pieces. And the way that I approached it was, instead of just diving into the nuances of the challenging parts and things like that, I literally sat down and thought of a story that I could come up with, something personal actually. Actually, no. Was it personal? Yes, something personal that I came up with to help me depict what this story is about, right? What this piece is about. What does this piece mean to me, right? Once I had my story, like I said before, then I was able to break everything down into sections, right? I would start off with the challenging parts. I would start off, shaping that and with my own storytelling and things like that. Then I'm going to the less challenging parts, and I would practice it in sections, right? And then I remember there was a point where I was practicing everything in sections, and then when I tried to put everything together, it was really confusing to do, right? And the reason why it was so confusing is because I got away from the importance of storytelling, right? I just wanted to just practice everything from beginning to end with no rhyme or reason as to why I'm practicing this piece the way that I was practicing it. What was my main goal? The main goal was to tell my personal story through this wonderful piece, right? So the story that I shared, or the story that I came up with, my own personal story, it was me. The way I look at this piece, it depicts my childhood, right? I was raised with my grandparents. I moved out of my mom's house due to her, mental illness and stuff like that. That took an emotional toll on me, right? And that's depicted for sure in these opening sections from the Sonata in B minor, where you have these crazy, ominous, quiet, sotto voce piano chords on G. And then at 5 years old, I had to move out my grandmother's house, my mom's house, and go live with my parents. Now, of course, that changed everything for me, right? Emotionally, I was going from somebody who I knew firsthand, my mom, going to my grandparents' house, who at the time I didn't know that well, right? So you can imagine the emotional toll it had on me. So that's what depicts this whole entire opening section of the Sonata in B minor. Right? And then as time went on, when I moved in with my grandparents, I started to see how beautiful and wonderful it is living with my grandparents. So now that was depicted with the whole entire section right here. Where is it at? I'm looking at it right here. Okay, so we have this part right here. Et cetera, right? So once I learned this whole entire piece and I memorized everything, it was time to put everything together. And like I said before, the first couple run-throughs of the sonata in B minor, of me playing it, it felt all over the place. I felt lost. I felt like I couldn't play it cohesively. I felt like I'm sitting here for a half hour and it was just complete, utter nonsense that I was playing. Right, and then my turning point was coincidentally and simultaneously I was also studying with a professor in school, and the turning point for me was her saying, "What is the story that you're telling? What are you trying to get across? It seems like you lost sense of what you were trying to depict to your audience, right?" And she explained, like, at the same time as well, that, like, at times when she used to play long form repertoire, she had those same issues. It's like a brain fog comes over you when you're not focused on what is your main issue, what is the main goal that you're trying to get with this piece across. I'm not saying that correctly. What is the main goal for you to your audience? What are you trying to say through your music? The minute that you decide to focus on the length of how long you're playing, right, instead of focusing more on what is the story that you're trying to get across, that's when everything becomes muck and mire, right? That's when you're sitting here at this piano, you're playing this piece that's a half hour long, 32 minutes long, sometimes 34 minutes long, and then you just get bored, right? Or you're playing all the right notes, but you're not connected to it. You're starting to feel like you're sitting here way too long. And the point that I'm trying to make is that you can never lose your purpose when you're playing long pieces, when you're playing long repertoire. You cannot lose the purpose. You have to always stay focused on what you're getting across to your audience, right? Or even if you're playing for yourself, pretend like there's people in the room with you, right? Pretend like there's people who are standing there watching you. And pretend like you are having a conversation with them. Let's say you're having a verbal conversation with them. If you're having a verbal conversation with somebody and you're passionate about whatever you're talking about, you're not going to draw a brain fog onto what you're saying, right? Because you're passionate, you're conversing. It's the same thing when you're practicing these long pieces that's 45 minutes long or 30 minutes long, whatever the case may be. In this example, the sonata in B minor, 32 minutes long. I had to really put myself in an actual performance setting when I was practicing this music. And keep in mind the importance of what story am I trying to depict through this music, through the piano, to whatever quote-unquote audience was there that I made up in my head. And once I started doing that, once I started focusing more on the importance of telling my story, anytime the practice would come, I'm not losing sight of what I'm playing. Or I'm not drawing fog. I'm not sitting here like, oh my goodness, this is just aimless practice. I'm sitting here bored. I know how to play this piece. But I didn't really know how to play the piece because I was so focused on the length of it and losing sight of my story, right? And something that I always tell my students and the people that I coach, how you practice is how you perform. When you're in your practice room, if you're not focused, if you realize that you can't find your center and find your focus, and you think that, okay, when it comes to performance, I'm going to be okay. No, you are not. You are going to fall flat on your face, and you're going to be really embarrassed, right? So instead, focus entirely on what is the story. If you need to, sometimes what I do as well is I'll write out this section right here. This is what this means to me. This is the story that I'm coming up with. This next section, etc., etc. Boom, 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 until I get to the end. And then sometimes I'll go a step even further and write down the whole entire story out as a script for me to understand that I have to focus on the whole entire story behind this music. My own story. What is my interpretation of this wonderful music? So when it came to the sonata in B minor, that's a lot of times that's what I was doing, right? Writing stuff out, writing how I felt, telling my whole entire childhood story, things like that of what I'd gone through and ups and downs and trials and tribulations, all those wonderful things and how I overcame and I got to the end and I am great, right? I wrote all of that out and it helped me tremendously, right? So if anybody is struggling with long form repertoire, especially if it's, let's say it's a concerto, if it's piano concertos, if it's Rachmaninoff's piano concerto, the second one is roughly 40 minutes long. His third one is over 40 minutes long. Tchaikovsky piano concerto number 1 is 45 minutes long in playing. And it's 3 movements of really intense, challenging music. If you struggle piecing it together, then I want you to focus more on what story you're telling. Of course, focus on the notes that you're playing, right? But don't let those notes consume you so much that you lose sight of what's important. And what's important is your story behind the music, regardless if you're playing with a whole bunch of other instruments, right? When it comes to long form piano content, piano repertoire, you have to always focus on the story when you perform it. And even before you get to the stage, you have to focus on the, in the practice room, focus on the story. Yes, you've done the brilliant work, you've turned it inside out, you've practiced in rhythms and all those great things to get the challenging passages under your fingers to build the muscle memory, all those great things that you've done, right? But you cannot lose sight of what's important. I know I keep drilling this. It's the story. As long as you stay focused on the story, everything is going to be all right. I'll tell you something else. I remember I was playing Scriabin's Opus 8, number 12A2, the one in D sharp minor. I played that roughly like 15 years ago, so 2010. I got on stage and I made a mistake. I got to a certain part where I lost sight of what I was playing, right? And I drew a blank. And after the performance was over, I felt so bad. I felt terrible. My teacher, she kept it 100 with me. She said, hey, that memory slip right there, that's unexcusable. We practiced. I showed you how to practice. I showed you what to focus on. I was so nervous because I'm so worried about, what if I make the mistake, right? Or I was so nervous because I was afraid I was going to make the mistake. I was also so nervous that I was worried about what people would think, right, about my own playing. Those are 2 recipes for disaster and 2 things that need to be worked out way before you get on the stage. And the question becomes, well, how does somebody work on that part of learning piano, the performance section of learning piano? And it's very simple. So you remember how I said, when it comes to long repertoire, piano repertoire, focusing on the story, it's the same thing. The nerves of being nervous, right, is part of performing, right? But if you could channel that and flip it into focusing on what you're playing and focusing on the story that you're trying to get across to your audience, the nervousness goes away. My problem also, another thing I struggled with was, when I get on stage, was I know that I like to have certain body movements. I like to make certain facial expressions. I was so worried about what people would think. Maybe people are going to think I'm weird. Maybe people thought I was going to be, people would laugh at me. People would probably think that I am Lang Lang, who has very exaggerated body movements when he plays the piano. But it's not about what other people think. Lang Lang don't care. And Lang Lang is the top 1% of classical pianists in the world, right? He don't care about what people think. All he cares about is what is the music that he's trying to, what is the story that he's trying to depict through the music to his audience. And if it causes him to that's how he feels the music, right? He don't care about none of that. He don't care about what people think. So when it came to me, I had to, watching Lang Langs, I quickly learned the importance of not caring about what other people think, right? If you go into competition, of course, yes, there's people judging you. But you, as the pianist, you have to get so lost in your story, so lost in the music, so lost in the sauce, quote unquote, that nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. You're so focused, you're so engulfed into what you're playing. You're so focused on what you're playing that person over there can be laughing at you. Or a group of people, the whole audience can be laughing at you. You are to stay focused on your story and tell what is happening in here through your music. One last thing, I'm gonna give you one more thing. If you've ever seen the movie Soul, there's a part where he's playing the piano, right? And he closes his eyes, right? And then you see like the effects of him, the blue swirling lights around him, and you see him being like levitating off his piano, or the piano in him is levitating in the air, and his eyes are closed, he's feeling the music, and he's just playing, and it's going on for a little while, and then he catches himself to see who's looking. And everybody, the small group of people that he was auditioning for, they were looking. And he immediately felt embarrassed. But if you remember, and of course, if you remember, they were saying, no, don't feel embarrassed. You were lost. These are not the exact words, but you were so lost into what you're playing. And that's what it's all about. Getting lost into what you're playing. Getting lost into the story that you're trying to depict to your audience. If you worry about anything else, you are robbing yourself and your audience the opportunity to really enjoy you and your story. And that is a recipe for disaster as a pianist, as a classical pianist, as a musician, as a performer in general. You have to get lost in the music. So, with all that being said, just to recap, the way that you practice long-form repertoire, the way you piece everything together is to have a story, right? When you're practicing it, you're focused on the story, you're lost in the music, and when you perform it, it's the same exact concept. It's not worrying about what other people think. It's about what you think about this music and the story that you're trying to convey to your audience. That's the most important thing. Whether it's the regular stage, whether you're playing for 2 people, whether you're playing for 50,000, whether you're in competition against whoever else and you're playing in the Tchaikovsky competition or whatever, the highest forms of competition, the lowest forms, it doesn't matter. What matters is what is the story that you're trying to get across. So, my name is Cliff Jones. Thank you so much for tuning in. For anybody who is struggling with piano, wanting to get better, wanting to improve their technique, and wanting to improve overall their artistry, or even if you're just a beginner starting out, I have a free version of my Skool community called Cliff's Keys. It is 3 classrooms that shows you short form teaching content, everything from how to work on your left hand, how to work on dynamics, how to end pieces a specific type of way so that it won't take away from the aesthetic that your audience sees when you're performing. So many great gems I have in this whole entire school that is definitely guaranteed to help you become the greatest pianist that you can become. If you're interested, head to the link in my description and join my Skool community today. I love y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. And always remember, I'm not teaching you music, I'm teaching you life. Take care.